Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, and welcome to another weekend book review. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
We've noticed a lot of you are tuning in, which is amazing, but I haven't quite hit that subscribe button yet.
Yeah, and that little button, honestly, it's so small, but it makes such a huge difference in helping us reach more people with these important discussions.
Right. It's true. Like the algorithms, those mysterious forces that decide what we all see and hear, they pay a lot of attention to subscriber numbers.
Yeah, think of it like the subscribing. It's like casting a vote for quality content, So these insightful research discussions don't just get lost in the sea of all the information out there.
More subscribers equals more visibility. Right. And that means more resources for us to make even deeper dives for you.
Yeah.
Maybe bring in experts for interviews, even do some live Q&A sessions where you can jump in.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about building a community around research,
Yeah.
where curiosity thrives and knowledge is like shared and debated.
And today we're going to be exploring a really fascinating concept called Softwar.
Softwar.
It's a new way of thinking about power projection in the digital age.
Okay.
And we're going to be unpacking an academic thesis titled Softwar, a novel theory on power projection and the national strategic significance of Bitcoin.
Right.
It's by Jason P. Lowery.
Jason P. Lowery.
And he's an active duty U.S. Air Force officer.
Wow.
Who is also researching Bitcoin at MIT.
Very interesting.
So right off the bat, I can tell that this is going to be a thought-provoking deep dive.
Yeah, he throws down the gauntlet in this paper.
Yeah.
He's basically making the argument that Bitcoin could be the first example of software.
So we're talking about software as a weapon?
Yeah, software functioning as a power rejection tool.
Okay.
Which has some fascinating implications for national and global security.
And that sounds like we're stepping into some sci-fi territory here.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's heady stuff.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, Lowery starts by taking us back to nature.
Back to nature.
Yeah, he argues that competition for resources in the natural world has always driven the development of power projection tactics.
Yeah.
Everything from, teeth and claws to camouflage.
So survival of the fittest, but with algorithms and code?
Exactly. He actually uses this concept of BCRA.
BCRA.
Which is the benefit-cost ratio of attack.
Okay.
It's essentially an attacker's way of weighing, the potential benefit of an attack versus the cost that they might incur.
Makes sense.
And organisms try to lower their BCRA by increasing their capacity to impose costs, what he calls their CA.
CA.
So think of like a porcupine
Okay.
with its quills. That's a great example of high CA.
So it's all about deterrence.
Yeah.
Even in nature.
Even in nature.
But how does this apply to humans and, Bitcoin and digital power?
Well, we do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
We've always sought ways to increase our CA.
Okay.
First with physical strength, then weapons, and then alliances. We create systems that make attacking us too costly. But then things get really interesting when Lowery introduces this idea of abstract power.
Abstract power. What is that?
So think laws, hierarchies, governments.
Okay.
These human-created systems designed to manage resources and minimize constant physical conflict.
Right. So instead of, constantly fighting over a piece of land,
Yeah,
we create a system of property rights.
exactly.
Okay, so we're not just relying on brute force anymore. We're using systems and rules.
Right.
But what's the problem with that?
Well, abstract power has a major flaw.
Okay.
It relies on trust.
Oh.
And trust can be broken.
Yeah, that's true.
He actually uses the domestication of animals as an example.
Okay, interesting.
So wolves, once apex predators,
Yeah.
traded their natural CA for the perceived benefits of human protection and food.
So they became dogs.
It became dogs, exactly.
And reliant on humans.
Right, putting themselves in a vulnerable position.
So how does that relate to abstract power in human society?
Well, if a system relies on trust, it becomes vulnerable to exploitation, manipulation, even collapse.
Oh, right.
He points to historical examples like the fall of Constantinople, due to gunpowder, which disrupted the established power balance, or even something like President Kennedy's assassination, which demonstrates the fragility of abstract power, even in modern times.
So even with all of our systems and laws and everything, we're still vulnerable in some ways.
We are.
I'm still not seeing the connection to Bitcoin and this whole software idea, though.
Okay, well, this is where Lowery takes us to the kinetic ceiling.
The kinetic ceiling.
Our ability to inflict physical damage has become so efficient that it's practically unusable.
Okay.
Nuclear weapons, for example.
Yeah.
Create a stalemate because the cost of using them is so devastating.
So we're too good at destroying each other.
In a sense, yes.
Wow.
But here's the kicker. that kinetic stalemate doesn't equal peace.
Right.
It creates a dangerous situation where those wielding abstract power,
Like governments and institutions.
exactly, have an unchecked advantage. What we need, Lowery argues, is a new form of non-lethal power projection for the digital age.
Interesting.
Something he calls electronic antlers.
Electronic antlers. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But I'm still not quite getting how Bitcoin fits into all of this.
That's where we're going next.
Okay, all right, let's get into it.
Lowery makes the audacious claim that Bitcoin, with its unique properties, might be the first example of this soft war.
Okay.
This new kind of power dynamic playing out in the digital world.
All right, I'm ready to dive into the world of Bitcoin. Let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about nature, abstract power, the kinetic ceiling.
Yeah.
But how does Bitcoin actually function as software? I feel like we're still talking about apples and oranges here.
That's the brilliance of Lowery's argument.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about organisms evolving ways to increase their cost of attack?
Right.
Well, Bitcoin does something similar, but in the digital realm.
Okay, but Bitcoin is just a digital currency, right? How can it be a weapon or a tool of power projection?
Well, think about the way Bitcoin works.
Okay.
It's based on a decentralized network, right? Secured by thousands of computers all around the world, constantly competing to solve these complex mathematical problems.
Right.
This is what we call mining.
Mining.
And the first miner to solve the problem gets to add a block of transactions to the Bitcoin blockchain, and they're rewarded with newly minted Bitcoins.
Right. I heard about Bitcoin mining, but I've always been a little fuzzy on the details. What does this have to do with power projection?
Well, the key is that mining requires an immense amount of computing power and energy.
Yep.
And the more computing power a miner has, the greater their chances of winning that competition and earning Bitcoins.
So are you saying that the more electricity you have, the more power you have in the Bitcoin world?
It's a fascinating parallel, isn't it?
Yeah. It almost sounds like we're going back to the pre-industrial age.
In a way, Bitcoin brings physical resources back into the equation of power dynamics. Now imagine a nation state decides to flex its muscles in this digital arena. They could build these massive mining farms consuming, vast amounts of electricity.
Wow.
To gain a dominant share of the Bitcoin network's hash rate.
Hash rate, remind me what that is again.
Yeah, so that's basically the total computational power being used to secure the Bitcoin network.
Got it.
And the higher a nation's hash rate, the more influence they potentially have over the blockchain.
Okay, so that's how a country could theoretically use Bitcoin as software again. They could control a big chunk of the network and potentially use that to their advantage.
Exactly, and that advantage can manifest in several ways.
Such as?
They could censor transactions, blocking certain individuals or entities from using the network.
Wow.
They could even attempt something called a 51% attack.
A 51% attack.
Where they control enough computing power to potentially rewrite the blockchain's history.
Rewrite history. That sounds dangerous. Wouldn't that undermine the whole point of Bitcoin?
It would be a major blow to the system, but thankfully Bitcoin is incredibly resilient.
Okay.
A 51% attack would require an immense amount of resources, making it a very risky and costly endeavor, even for a powerful nation state.
Okay.
It's important to remember that Bitcoin is designed to be decentralized and resistant to this kind of manipulation.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Bitcoin could be used as software, but it's also designed to resist centralized control.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah, that's what makes this whole discussion so intriguing. It forces us to rethink traditional notions of power and how they might play out in this new digital landscape.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? We've explored this idea of Bitcoin as software, but what are the broader implications? Does Lowery offer any insights into how this might actually affect national strategic security?
He does, and that's where we'll pick up next. Get ready for a deep dive into the potential strategic advantages and risks of software on the global stage.
Okay, so we've established that Bitcoin has the potential to be used as software, but how would this play out in the real world? What kind of strategic advantages would this give to nation states?
Let's think about it like a game of chess.
Okay.
Controlling a significant portion of the Bitcoin network's hash rate would be like controlling key squares on the board. A nation state with that kind of influence could disrupt or even cripple their adversaries' ability to participate in the global economy.
So it's not just about controlling the currency itself, it's about controlling the network that underpins it.
Exactly. Imagine a scenario where a nation becomes heavily reliant on Bitcoin for international trade.
Yeah.
Or even holds a significant portion of its foreign currency reserves in Bitcoin.
Right.
Suddenly, the entity that controls a large chunk of the network's hash rate has a huge amount of leverage.
That's a scary thought. It's almost like a new form of economic warfare.
Right.
But Lowery also suggests that Bitcoin could have positive implications for national security, right? How does that work?
It's counterintuitive, but he argues that Bitcoin could actually act as a deterrent to conflict, fostering a kind of global stability through mutual interest.
Wait, how does a system that could be used as a weapon also promote peace?
Think about it this way. If multiple nations are deeply intertwined with the Bitcoin network, relying on it for critical functions, they all have a vested interest in ensuring the network's security and stability.
Right.
Attacking the network would be like shooting yourself in the foot.
So it creates a kind of digital interdependence that makes conflict less desirable.
Exactly. Instead of mutually assured destruction, we have mutually assured preservation.
Wow.
Everyone benefits from a stable and secure Bitcoin network, even if they're rivals in other domains.
That's a pretty optimistic outlook. But what about the impact on traditional power structures? Bitcoin is all about decentralization and individual empowerment. Doesn't that inherently clash with the way governments and institutions operate?
It certainly challenges the status quo.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's permissionless and egalitarian nature could disrupt existing hierarchies, giving more power to individuals and potentially undermining the control of central authorities.
So it's not just a new kind of weapon, it's a potential disruptor of the entire global power structure. There's a pretty big claim.
It is a radical idea.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is so fascinating to study. It forces us to confront fundamental questions about power control and the future of governance in the digital age. And it's not just theoretical. These dynamics are playing out right now as we speak.
Wow. So this isn't just some academic thought experiment. It has real-world implications.
Absolutely. Lowery's thesis is a call to action for policymakers, researchers, and anyone interested in understanding the future of power in the digital age.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has left me with more questions than answers. But I definitely have a newfound appreciation for the complexity of this topic.
That's the beauty of a true deep dive. It's not about providing definitive answers, but rather about opening up new avenues of inquiry and challenging our assumptions.
And that's exactly what this episode has done. We've gone from the survival strategies of porcupines to the potential for Bitcoin to reshape the global balance of power. It's been a wild ride.
Indeed. And I think the key takeaway here is that the digital realm is not some separate entity. It's deeply intertwined with the physical world.
Yeah.
And the actions we take in cyberspace have real-world consequences, especially when it comes to something as powerful as Bitcoin.
So as we wrap up this episode, I think it's important to remind our listeners that we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to explore and understand about Softwar and its implications.
And that's the exciting part. This is a field that's constantly evolving.
Right.
And the possibilities are endless.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to surface. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.